The morning sun filtered weakly through the towering hangars at the Military Aviation Academy, casting long shadows over the concrete runways where dozens of sleek helicopters and fighter jets rested, polished to perfection. It was another day of rigorous training for the cadets, young men eager to prove themselves in one of the toughest flight programs in the country. The academy was a crucible of discipline and skill, a place where only the strongest survived. Traditions ran deep here, and the atmosphere buzzed with unspoken rules and expectations. On this particular morning, however, the routine was about to be broken. A convoy of black SUVs rolled through the gates, drawing the curious gaze of every cadet lounging around the barracks or lining up for breakfast. The doors opened, and a solitary figure stepped out, a woman, tall and poised, dressed sharply in her flight suit. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and her sharp eyes scanned the campus with calm determination. She was the only female pilot among the latest group of incoming cadets, and her arrival was as unexpected as it was noticeable. The cadets, many of whom had already heard rumors, stared openly. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a sudden gust of wind. Some smirked, others chuckled quietly. "Must be a mistake," one muttered. "Wonder if she can even handle the basics," another joked. The voice of skepticism echoed louder. Then the morning announcements. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Jensen, though most here had not yet learned it. To the cadets, she was simply the girl. And in an environment where masculinity and physical toughness were prized above all, her presence sparked a wave of doubt, and for some outright mockery. Sarah walked with a quiet confidence that unsettled the easy jabs. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She had felt the weight of every skeptical glance and heard the snide remarks whispered behind her back. She wasn't new to this. For years, she had fought to break into an almost exclusively male profession, and she knew the first battles were always the hardest. But what none of the cadets could see, not yet, was the strength beneath her calm exterior. She was no ordinary pilot. She had trained and flown in the most demanding, covert operations imaginable. Her skills had been honed in the darkness of night missions, navigating helicopters through enemy territory with precision and stealth. Yet here, at the academy, none of that mattered. Not yet. As Sarah reported to the training officers, the eyes of the cadets followed her every move, some with curiosity, most with judgment. They whispered among themselves, some betting she'd drop out by the first week. Others said she'd never keep pace with the physical demands of the course. The underlying sentiment was clear. She didn't belong, but Sarah's mind was elsewhere. She knew that proving herself wouldn't be about winning arguments or trading insults. It would be about showing up every day and refusing to back down, even when the doubts felt like an ocean pushing against her. That first afternoon, she was introduced to the grueling schedule, long hours of physical conditioning, technical drills, flight simulations, and tactical training exercises. The instructors, some skeptical themselves, watched her carefully, waiting for the first sign of weakness. Sarah, however, accepted the challenge with quiet resolve. She pushed her body and mind beyond exhaustion, staying late to study and rising early to prepare. Meanwhile, the cadets continued to whisper and laugh, making bets on how long she'd last. "She cracked before the first flight," one said. "Or worse, she'd get herself killed," another joked, laughter trailing behind the words, but Sarah didn't respond. She ignored the snickers and the sideways glances. Every insult was like fuel, every laugh a reminder of what she was fighting against. She didn't need to prove anything to them yet. What mattered was that she believed in herself. That night, as the academy settled into silence, Sarah sat alone in the small dormitory room assigned to her. She pulled out her flight manuals and training notes, carefully going over each page. The hum of the distant jets landing and taking off was a steady rhythm, a reminder of the skies she aimed to conquer. She thought about her journey, the sacrifices, the late nights, the endless hours of practice, the loneliness she often felt as one of the few women in a male-dominated field. But most of all, she thought about the challenge ahead. The challenge of not only mastering the demanding training, but of changing the minds of those who didn't believe she belonged. Outside, The cadets laughed and joked, unaware that the very person they mocked was already preparing to become one. Of the Academy's most formidable pilots. In that moment, Sarah Jensen wasn't just the lone female pilot. She was a storm quietly gathering strength. Ready to shatter expectations and fly beyond the limits set by others, the dawn broke cold and unforgiving over the training grounds, painting the sky in pale hues of orange and gray. For most cadets, mornings began with relentless physical conditioning, runs, push-ups, obstacle courses, designed to push every muscle to its limits. Lieutenant Sarah Jensen stepped onto the track with the others, but from the start, it was clear she faced challenges beyond the usual grueling routine. The Academy was designed to test endurance, skill, and mental toughness. The physical demands were punishing, and the male cadets, built tough from years of intense preparation, had an immediate advantage. Sarah's legs burned with the sting of every sprint. Her lungs gasped for air under the weight of the heavy pack. But she refused to slow. Every time her body screamed to stop, her mind pushed her further. Yet the harder she worked, the louder the whispers became. "Look at her struggle," a cadet sneered as she stumbled during the obstacle course. "Maybe she should switch to desk duty," another joked. The sneers weren't hidden, they were deliberately loud, aimed to break her spirit and rattle her resolve. At first, Sarah felt the sting of those words keenly. But she had faced prejudice before. She had learned early that talent and determination were often met with suspicion and scorn when they came in an unexpected package. In her past missions, she had survived far worse than the cold judgment of peers. The Academy's sneers were just another battlefield. In the classroom, the challenges changed, but never lessened. Complex technical lessons on navigation systems, aerodynamics, and helicopter mechanics demanded sharp focus. Here, Sarah excelled, her past experience a quiet secret giving her an edge. Yet, even when she answered questions flawlessly or demonstrated advanced knowledge, the cadets whispered that it was luck or cheating. Recognition was slow to come, and respect felt miles away. One afternoon, after a particularly tough flight simulation, she overheard a group of cadets laughing cruelly. "Maybe she's good because she's had special training," one said. "Probably a secret government pilot or something. Bet she can't hack it in real combat." The laughter was sharp, but Sarah barely flinched. If only they knew the truth. The physical exhaustion compounded the mental weight. Long hours of training left her muscles trembling and her mind fogged. Injuries she picked up during drills slowed her down, and some days she questioned if she could keep pace. Yet each morning she rose early, fueling her body with what little rest she could steal and her mind with fierce determination. Her instructors noticed her grit but remained cautious. Some admired her tenacity, but others doubted if she could sustain it. "She's tough, but can she handle the pressure when lives depend on her decisions?" a senior officer mused during a briefing. Sarah overheard the question and vowed silently. To prove the answer was yes. One day, during a particularly brutal endurance run, she fell behind the pack. Her legs cramped, breath ragged, and chest burning, she pushed herself forward, refusing to let the sneers echo louder than her heartbeat. She crossed the finish line last, but standing. The other cadets looked on with a mix of disbelief and grudging respect. Here was a woman who refused to quit. No matter the cost, despite the physical and social battles, Sarah's focus never wavered from the sky. Flight simulations became her sanctuary, a place where she could immerse herself in the technical finesse of flying. She stayed late in the simulator rooms, tweaking maneuvers and running through emergency protocols again and again. She practiced communication drills and tactical responses, knowing every detail could save a life someday. Yet, outside those rooms, the whispers continued. "She's not one of us," some said. "She doesn't belong here." The words stung, but Sarah used them like armor. Each slight built her resolve. She refused to let anyone's doubt become her own. In rare moments alone, Sarah allowed herself to feel the weight of isolation. The academy was vast and crowded, yet she often felt invisible or targeted, a solitary figure against a sea of doubt. But even in solitude, she reminded herself of why she was here: to break barriers, to prove that skill and courage could come from anywhere. Her personal life was all but non-existent now. Friendships were tentative, and trust was hard-earned. The cadets who showed kindness did so quietly, wary of social backlash. But Sarah understood the loneliness as part of the journey, a sacrifice on the path to something greater. Slowly, subtle changes began. A few cadets stopped laughing outright and started watching, their eyes searching for signs of weakness and finding none. Some began to ask questions about her training, curious rather than mocking. The shift was fragile but real. Deep down, Sarah knew that these early struggles, the doubts, the physical pain, the social isolation, were shaping her into the pilot she needed to become. She was being tested not just as a flyer, but as a pioneer, forging a path where few women had dared to tread, and somewhere beneath the surface, a fire was growing, one that would soon ignite and silence every laugh that had ever greeted her arrival. Asterisk as the academy days blurred into weeks. Lieutenant Sarah Jensen's struggle continued, but so did something much deeper, her fierce, unseen determination. While the cadets focused on their physical prowess and outward bravado, Sarah was quietly building something invisible, but far more powerful. Each grueling workout, each endless study session was another brick laid in the foundation of her success. Her fellow cadets saw the surface, the occasional stumble, the exhaustion, the social distance. What they didn't see was the storm beneath, a mind sharpened by experience and fueled by unwavering resolve. Long after the sun had set and the academy fell silent, Sarah remained awake. Her dorm room, modest and sparse, was lit only by the soft glow of a desk lamp, surrounded by scattered flight manuals, maps, and mission notes. While most cadets dreamed of glory or resented the grind, she embraced it. The nights were her time, when distractions faded and her focus honed razor-sharp. Her past missions haunted her in ways few understood. The darkness of night flights, the pressure of life-or-death decisions, and the constant tension of covert operations had shaped her into someone who thrived in silence and solitude. This was not her first battle, it was just a new kind of one. She studied every detail of helicopter systems, memorizing emergency protocols and tactical maneuvers. She replayed scenarios in her mind, envisioning the perfect response to every challenge. Flying wasn't just a skill to her, it was a complex dance between mind and machine. Life and death, precision and instinct. Despite her talent, Sarah kept her past quiet. The academy was a fresh start, a proving ground where she wanted to earn respect on merit alone. Revealing her history too soon might alienate her further, or worse, invite jealousy and suspicion. So she worked in silence, her accomplishments accumulating like unseen steps toward an inevitable breakthrough. When the other cadets laughed or sneered, Sarah's response was silence, not weakness, but strategy. She knew that fighting their prejudice head-on would only drain her energy. Instead, she focused on what she could control, her training, her mindset, and her flight skills. The physical toll was immense. Her body ached from early mornings and late nights. Muscles cramped, injuries flared, and exhaustion hovered at the edge of every day. There were moments when her spirit wavered, when the weight of doubt and isolation threatened to overwhelm. But each time she dug deeper. She refused to let fatigue or fear dictate her limits. In the gym, she pushed through the final reps when her arms trembled uncontrollably. In the classroom, she stayed after hours to review lessons until the material became second nature. In the simulator, she practiced emergency landings and evasive maneuvers until her hands moved automatically. Guided by muscle memory and experience, small victories fueled her. The first time she nailed a difficult flight simulation, her heart swelled quietly with pride. The first time an instructor nodded with approval, a flicker of hope warmed her resolve. These moments were fragile, but they reminded her that progress, though slow, was happening. She also found unexpected allies. A handful of cadets, initially unsure, began to respect her dedication. They asked questions, shared tips, or simply acknowledged her effort without judgment. These small connections offered brief reprieves from loneliness and strengthened her will, but the real battle was within. Sarah wrestled constantly with the question, how much of herself should she reveal? The world outside the academy knew her as a Nightstalker, an elite pilot trained for covert night missions where silence was survival. Inside, she had to be patient. Letting her skills speak louder than her reputation, she often reflected on the barriers she had already broken. As one of the few women in an overwhelmingly male environment, she understood the weight of expectations and stereotypes. But she refused to be defined by them. She was more than a gender. She was a pilot, a warrior, a force ready to rewrite the rules. Her determination was not fueled by anger, but by an unshakable belief in possibility. She dreamed of a day when no cadet would question her place simply because she was a woman. A day when skill and courage would be the only measures of worth. At night, when the academy was quiet and the stars blinked coldly above, Sarah Jensen prepared for the challenges ahead. The laughs of the cadets felt distant now, mere echoes against the backdrop of her growing strength. She was ready to show the academy, the cadets, and the world that determination could overcome doubt, that beneath her calm exterior was a pilot who would fly beyond limits and shatter every expectation. The journey was far from over, but Sarah's unseen determination was already carving a path through the silence, lighting the way for the battles still to come. Weeks had passed, and the atmosphere around Lieutenant Sarah Jensen was shifting, not just because of her relentless training, but because of the quiet rumors spreading among instructors and cadets alike. There was something different about her, something that made even the harshest critics pause. Yet the cadets, still clinging to their doubts, had no idea of the secret she carried. A secret that, once revealed, would turn their world upside down. Sarah's past was not just impressive, it was legendary. Before arriving at the academy, she had served as a Nightstalker, an elite helicopter pilot in a secretive, highly specialized unit tasked with covert night operations. These missions were shrouded in darkness and danger, involving stealth insertions, extraction of high-value targets, and flying through hostile territory under the veil of night. It was a world few knew about, even fewer understood. Her calm confidence in the simulator, her steady hands during flight drills, and her unshakable poise under pressure were all forged in this crucible of elite warfare. But Sarah had kept this part of herself locked away, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. She wanted to be judged by her skill and determination, not her reputation. That moment came unexpectedly during a high-level briefing when the Academy's command staff gathered to discuss the progress of their cadets. Sarah's instructors debated her abilities in hushed tones, impressed but cautious. The senior training officer, Colonel Briggs, finally decided to break the silence. "Sarah Jensen," he said firmly, "there's something you need to share with the cadets, your background, your experience." "It's time." The room grew tense. Sarah nodded, knowing this was the turning point. Standing before her peers and instructors, she calmly recounted her service as a Nightstalker, describing the missions that demanded unparalleled skill, nerves of steel, and a mastery of flying in the dead of night. She spoke of navigating helicopters through enemy fire, coordinating with special forces on the ground, and the countless nights spent flying invisible to the enemy's radar. Her voice was steady, her eyes unwavering as she revealed the depth of her experience. For the first time, the Academy heard the full story behind the quiet pilot, who had endured their doubts and ridicule. The reaction was immediate and electric. The cadets who had laughed and whispered now stared in stunned silence. Some exchanged glances, struggling to reconcile the image of the lone female pilot they had mocked with the elite warrior standing before them. The disbelief was palpable. How could someone they had dismissed so easily possess such formidable credentials? A murmur spread through the room. "She's a Nightstalker, one of those pilots we hear about in legends?" One cadet whispered, awe edging his voice. Others nodded slowly, respect replacing mockery. For the instructors, it was a confirmation of what they had suspected all along. Sarah wasn't just surviving the academy. She was excelling because she had been tested in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Her training wasn't just academic. It was battle-hardened. Despite the sudden shift in perception, Sarah remained humble. She made it clear that her past did not make her better than anyone else. It was simply part of her journey. What mattered now was the work ahead, the team she was helping to build, and the challenges they would face together. The revelation also changed the cadets' behavior. Some who had been openly hostile began approaching her with questions, curiosity replacing scorn. Others sought to learn from her, eager to understand the skills and mindset required to become a Nightstalker, but not all the reactions were positive. A few cadets felt threatened, their fragile egos bruised by the sudden shift. Quiet whispers of resentment lingered in the hallways, reminding Sarah that acceptance would take time. Still, the balance had tipped. Sarah had shattered the barrier of doubt, replacing it with respect and intrigue. The laughter that had greeted her arrival was now a memory, replaced by a growing recognition of her talent and leadership. This revelation also marked a turning point for Sarah herself. No longer did she need to hide her past or temper her confidence. She embraced her identity as a Nightstalker openly, letting it fuel her determination to lead and inspire. She knew the path ahead would be tough. Breaking down old prejudices was never easy. But now, armed with truth and skill, Sarah was ready to fly higher than ever before, proving that strength and courage were not defined by gender, but by heart and ability. The cadets who once mocked her were beginning to see the real Sarah Jensen, a pilot who had mastered the night and was ready to conquer the challenges of the day. After the revelation of Lieutenant Sarah Jensen's Nightstalker background, the Academy's atmosphere shifted dramatically. The once dismissive whispers became cautious conversations, and the mocking laughter gave way to grudging respect. Yet respect wasn't simply handed over. Sarah knew it had to be earned, and she was prepared to prove herself beyond any doubt. The days following her revelation were a whirlwind of activity. The cadets, curious and sometimes skeptical, watched her every move, waiting to see if she could back up the legend. For Sarah, this was an opportunity, not to flaunt her past, but to demonstrate that her skill and leadership were real, consistent and unshakable. She pushed herself harder than ever before. In physical training, Sarah matched and often surpassed the male cadets in every test of endurance, strength, and agility. Her hands, steady from years of piloting in the most intense situations, moved deftly during obstacle courses and technical drills. But it wasn't just her physical performance that caught attention, it was her attitude. Unlike some who saw the academy as a competition to crush others, Sarah was quietly inclusive. She offered help to struggling cadets, shared study tips, and encouraged teamwork during group exercises. Slowly, she began to bridge the gap between herself and those who had doubted her. One day during a simulated rescue mission, Sarah's skills shone brighter than ever. The scenario was complex. A mock hostage rescue deep in hostile terrain under adverse weather conditions. The tension was palpable as the cadets gathered in the command room, awaiting their turns. When Sarah's group was called, she took command. With calm authority, she coordinated with the ground team, calculated the safest approach, and executed the extraction flawlessly, navigating the helicopter through tight mountain passes and simulated enemy fire with precision. The successful mission ended with a cheer from instructors and a stunned silence from the cadets. "That was incredible," whispered one young man who had once openly mocked her. Another nodded, saying, "She's the real deal." But the journey wasn't without friction. Some cadets still struggled to accept her as a leader, their biases lingering beneath the surface. A few challenged her decisions during training exercises, testing her patience and resolve. Sarah met these challenges head-on, never letting anger cloud her judgment. Her leadership style was firm but fair. She made it clear that respect was earned through performance and integrity, not gender or reputation. Slowly, those who had doubted her began to recognize her qualities: resilience, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to the team. Off the field, Sarah's presence began to change the culture of the academy. Younger cadets, including a growing number of women, found inspiration in her journey. She became a symbol of possibility, proof that barriers could be broken and new paths forged. Even the instructors took notice. Colonel Briggs, once skeptical, now regarded Sarah as one of the Academy's top candidates. "She's not just surviving," he said during a staff meeting. "She's leading. We'd be wise to watch closely. She has the potential to be one of the best." Sarah herself remained grounded. She knew the road ahead was long and demanding. Respect earned in training was only the first step toward a real career, one where lives would depend on every decision she made. Still, in those moments of success, when the academy stopped doubting and started believing, Sarah allowed herself a quiet smile. Every doubter silenced, every sneer replaced with admiration, was a small victory, a sign that she was not just accepted, but valued. Her journey was no longer just about proving herself to others. It was about embracing her role as a leader, mentor, and pioneer. As the sun set over the training grounds, casting long shadows over the runway, Sarah Jensen stood tall among her peers. The lone female pilot who had once been laughed at was now respected and followed, but deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning. The true test of her strength, and the moment that would forever change her place in history, was yet to come. The Academy's training calendar was marked by one event above all others, the crucial test. It was the final, grueling assessment designed to push every cadet to their absolute limits. Physical endurance, tactical skill, teamwork, and mental toughness would all be judged in a series of relentless challenges. For most cadets, it was the defining moment that could make or break their future. For Lieutenant Sarah Jensen, the crucial test was more than just another exam. It was a battlefield where every doubt, every sneer, every whispered insult would be confronted head-on. Months of preparation had led to this day, and she was determined to prove not just to the Academy but to herself that she belonged among the best. The morning of the test arrived cold and sharp. A thick fog clung to the training grounds, reducing visibility and adding a layer of realism to the simulated combat conditions. The cadets gathered silently, their faces tense with anticipation. The first phase was the physical challenge, an obstacle course designed to simulate battlefield conditions. Mud, barbed wire, climbing walls, and water pits tested strength and agility. Sarah took off with the rest, muscles burning but steady. She moved with purpose, clearing each obstacle with a mix of precision and grit that left some of the cadets trailing behind. But it wasn't just physical strength that counted. Next came tactical exercises, where teams were assigned complex missions. Sarah was chosen to lead her squad, a mix of cadets, some still wary of her leadership. The mission: extract a simulated hostage from hostile territory, navigate a treacherous landscape, and return safely, all under simulated enemy fire and limited communications. Sarah's voice was calm but authoritative as she briefed her team. "We move fast, stay sharp, and watch each other's backs. Trust your training." The team moved out, the tension palpable. They communicated with quiet efficiency, Sarah's leadership steadying nerves and focusing attention. When unexpected obstacles appeared, a simulated ambush, equipment failure, Sarah adapted quickly, rallying her squad with decisive commands. At one point, the helicopter simulator malfunctioned during a critical extraction. Panic flickered briefly, but Sarah's years as a Nightstalker shone through. She calmly took control, running through emergency procedures while coordinating with her team on the ground. Her composure was unshakable. The mission ended successfully, with the squad extracting the hostage and returning within the time limit. As they landed, a wave of relief and quiet pride washed over the team. But the crucial test wasn't over. The final phase was a mental endurance challenge, a long night of continuous simulations, decision-making under stress, and strategic planning. Cadets were pushed to the brink, facing unexpected scenarios designed to test their ability to think clearly when exhaustion threatened to take over. Sarah sat in the dimly lit control room, eyes sharp despite fatigue. Hours of sleep deprivation had dulled others' focus, but she tapped into her Nightstalker training, nights spent flying missions when every second counted. Every decision could mean life or death when a surprise simulated crisis arose. A sudden change in weather and enemy positions, Sarah took command again. Her tactical mind raced, calculating risks and adjustments, guiding her team through the storm. By dawn, the crucial test was complete. Exhausted but triumphant, Sarah and her fellow cadets gathered for the debrief. The instructors were silent for a moment before Colonel Briggs stood and spoke. "Lieutenant Jensen," he said, voice carrying through the room, "you have demonstrated exceptional skill, leadership, and resilience. You've not only met the Academy's highest standards, but set a new example for all." The room erupted in applause, loud, sincere, and unanimous. Even those who had once doubted her now stood in respect. Sarah allowed herself a small, tired smile. The crucial test had been more than a challenge. It was a reckoning. She had faced the shadows of doubt, the weight of isolation, and the pressure of expectation, and emerged victorious. Yet, beneath the triumph lay a quiet realization. This was not the end of her journey, but the threshold of a greater one. The Academy had accepted her, but now the world beyond awaited. The missions that would test her skill and courage in ways no training could fully prepare for. As she looked around at the faces of her fellow cadets, some friends, some rivals, Sarah knew one thing for sure: she had earned her place. The lone female pilot was no longer a curiosity or an outsider. She was a Nightstalker, a leader, and a force to be reckoned with. The sky beyond the Academy gates beckoned, and Sarah Jensen was ready to soar. The training had been brutal, the crucial test conquered, but now the real challenge awaited Lieutenant Sarah Jensen, her first operational mission as a fully qualified pilot. The Academy walls had protected and shaped her, but the world beyond was unpredictable, dangerous, and unforgiving. The orders came in just days after the test. A high-stakes mission requiring precision, stealth, and nerves of steel. Sarah's unit was tasked with a nighttime extraction deep inside hostile territory, a mission where failure could mean the loss of lives and the exposure of their entire operation. Her heart quickened as she reviewed the mission details. Unlike training exercises, this was real. Every decision carried weight beyond simulation. The weather forecast predicted heavy cloud cover, reducing visibility further and increasing the risk. But it was precisely these conditions where Sarah's Nightstalker skills would prove invaluable. The team assembled in the dim briefing room, tension thick in the air. Sarah's commanding officer laid out the plan with sharp efficiency, but it was Sarah who felt the weight of responsibility most keenly. The lives of her crew and the success of the mission rested on her ability to pilot the helicopter through the treacherous night skies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah donned her flight gear. The familiar weight of the helmet, the hum of pre-flight checks, these rituals calmed her nerves and sharpened her focus. The hangar lights flickered as the team climbed into the helicopter, engines roaring to life. Once airborne, the world outside faded into darkness. The helicopter cut through the thick clouds, the only illumination coming from instrument panels and faint moonlight. Sarah's fingers danced over the controls, steady and precise. Years of night missions had taught her to trust her instincts and instruments when sight failed. Midway through the flight, the team encountered unexpected turbulence and intermittent enemy radar signals, signs that their approach had not gone unnoticed. Sarah's training kicked in. She adjusted the flight path, weaving through narrow mountain passes and using natural terrain to mask their presence. The tension inside the helicopter was palpable. Every movement was deliberate, every sound amplified in the silence of the night. The crew trusted Sarah's calm leadership, following her commands without hesitation. Upon reaching the extraction point, Sarah lowered the helicopter slowly, her eyes scanning the ground for threats. The team on the ground signaled their position with infrared markers, barely visible in the dark. The landing zone was tight, surrounded by dense forest and rocky cliffs. Minutes felt like hours as Sarah steadied the helicopter on the rough terrain. The extraction team boarded swiftly, their movements precise and practiced. Suddenly, distant gunfire echoed through the valley. Enemy patrols had discovered their presence. Sarah's heart raced, but her hands remained steady. She engaged the helicopter's evasive maneuvers, lifting off just as the first tracer round skimmed past the aircraft. The return flight was a tense race against time, with enemy forces closing in and communications jamming intermittently. Navigating through the thick clouds and enemy radar interference, Sarah relied on her Nightstalker training more than ever. She flew low and fast, using the natural cover of the terrain and weather to avoid detection. When the helicopter finally broke through the cloud cover over friendly territory, relief washed over the crew. The mission had been a success. Lives saved, objectives met, but it came at the cost of exhaustion etched deeply into every face. Back at base, the debrief was thorough. Commanders praised Sarah's skill and leadership under pressure, noting how her calm decision-making had turned a potentially catastrophic situation into a flawless extraction. The cadets who had once doubted her now saw her not just as a pilot but as a hero. News of her success spread quickly, inspiring others and silencing lingering doubts. For Sarah, the mission was a milestone, proof that she belonged in the skies, not just in training but in battle. Yet, as she removed her helmet and stared out at the dark horizon, she knew this was only the beginning. The life of a Nightstalker was one of constant challenge and sacrifice, but Lieutenant Sarah Jensen was ready to face every mission, every danger, every doubt, and soar above them all. Lieutenant Sarah Jensen's first mission had been a success, but it marked not an end, rather the beginning of a remarkable journey. She had faced down prejudice, isolation, and doubt to prove herself as a pilot, a leader, and a Nightstalker. Yet her story was far bigger than personal triumph. It was a legacy in the making. Back at the academy, Sarah's presence began to reshape the culture. Young cadets, particularly women who had once felt invisible or unwelcome, now looked to her as a beacon of possibility. She was living proof that barriers could be shattered, that stereotypes could be broken. Sarah took this responsibility seriously. Between missions, she volunteered as a mentor, offering guidance to those struggling with the grueling demands of training. She shared her knowledge freely, from tactical flying techniques to mental resilience, emphasizing that strength came from preparation, persistence, and unity. Her influence extended beyond the classroom. The academy itself began to reconsider traditions and policies, recognizing the value of diversity and inclusion. More women joined the ranks, emboldened by Sarah's example, yet Sarah never forgot the lessons of her past. The Nightstalker creed, silence, precision, courage, remained the core of who she was. Each mission reminded her that the sky was not just a place to prove skill, but a realm where lives depended on every decision. Every move, with each flight, her confidence grew. The Academy's most challenging exercises became opportunities to innovate, to lead, to push boundaries. Commanders came to rely on her judgment, knowing she could handle the most dangerous assignments with calm determination. But the greatest test of her legacy came unexpectedly. Months into her service, intelligence reported a critical situation. A team of special forces was trapped behind enemy lines, communication cut, time running out. The mission required a pilot capable of flying through the dead of night, navigating treacherous terrain under hostile fire, and executing a flawless extraction. Sarah was called upon as she prepared for the mission. Memories of her early days at the academy flooded her mind, the laughter, the doubts, the long nights of training and quiet determination. But she also felt the strength of her journey, the skills honed, the respect earned, the lives touched. The extraction was perilous. Enemy patrols swarmed the area, weather conditions worsened, and the margin for error was razor-thin. Yet Sarah's hands moved with practiced precision, her eyes scanning instruments and horizon alike. Through the darkness, she flew with unwavering focus. Her helicopter sliced through the night sky like a shadow, invisible and unstoppable. The trap team was found, lifted to safety, and flown home under a veil of silence and speed. When the mission ended, word spread quickly. Sarah Jensen had not only succeeded but redefined what it meant to be a pilot, a Nightstalker and a leader. Her story became legend, not just for the daring flights or tactical genius, but for the courage to rise above the noise of doubt and the strength to pave the way for others. Years later, as Sarah stood on the Academy's runway watching new cadets arrive, she smiled quietly. Among them were faces filled with hope and determination, ready to take on their own battles. She had become more than a pilot. She was a symbol of change, a testament to perseverance, and a living legacy. The cadets who once laughed were now silent. In awe, their laughter replaced by respect and admiration, Lieutenant Sarah Jensen, the lone female pilot, the Nightstalker, had rewritten the story. And in doing so, she had soared higher than anyone could have imagined.